Hello beautiful people and welcome back to episode 2, which we're gonna do now on Nelle, because there are a lot of combination possible with this hero. And in today's episode we're actually gonna test a different combination, which is Gipsy plus Striker and plus Nelle. But first of all, let's start with something far more important to give you a better idea of the possible hero combinations right now when it comes down to the tanks. But first of all, let's have a look at this great work again from Mr. Mikuyada, which calculates the score for a March based on their proc rate, based on their damage, based their buffs. So what have we tested yesterday was a Striker with Nelle and Brunhild, and their final score is 3902, and we tested that versus Mr. Striker, Gipsy and Snake Eyes, which is 3950. So yes, they are pretty close in performance, there's no question about it. So what are we testing today is Striker, Gipsy and Nelle, and we see a final score of 3589, which is slightly lower. But we also want to have a look with the help of the battle animation or with the battle reports and explain also what happened in there. Of course, this is not the last video on Nelle, that's no question about it, because if you now have a look on the left side of this graphic, you're seeing here Striker, Nelle and Nasuka being at 4325% final score, which is extremely hot. And of course we see Striker, Nelle and Snake Eyes. Yeah, I can imagine this can work like this, especially I think for me the key point right here is Striker being in there, because Snake Eyes really need that extra defense from Striker, which is in other words, he uses the slot 7, 8 and 9 in order to share damage with the front two rows, and that's exactly what helps Snake Eyes. So let's jump in today's setup and let's have a look at the battles and explain what happened there. So that's exactly what I was testing today. On my side, Mr. Gipsy, Striker and Nelle together versus Gipsy, Striker and Mr. Snake Eyes. And you can remember from the graphic that actually Gipsy, Striker and Snake Eyes will gonna have a better performance overall or in general, and that's exactly what you also gonna see with this battle reports right here. But first of all, as always, let's start by presenting you our today's sponsor, which is Mr. Colossus from server 2216. Thank you very much, buddy, for jumping in and helping out. Now let's have a look at the setup right here, because this is very important. So I went back to Gipsy level 7 with a Striker level 7, with Nelle level 5 versus Mr. Colossus with a Gipsy level 7, with a Striker level 7 and a Snake Eyes level 5. So this looks pretty much balanced. A small side note right here is you guys specifically asked me to take these pieces of gear off Nelle, which gives her the extra 30% in total magnet pulse damage, because yeah, still a lot of players out there are not able to obtain these effects, and that's exactly what I've done in here. You can pause the video and actually compare the stats from the gear, or you know what, you're gonna see that either way in the stats comparison. So we both are using the yellow heavy trooper, and I'm a super fan of this. Granted, we can use the newer heavy trooper, but then again, if I take in consideration the following important arguments, like the slots 1, 2, 3 being extra buff from the shark formation. Also the slots 1, 2, 3 we're gonna have a far higher offense buffing capability due to Mr. Gipsy. That's why I think, yeah, the Yellow Heavy Trooper doesn't have a hit per se, but the heroes can proc from the Yellow Heavy Trooper also, and on top of this, he is protecting and helping me keeping as high amount of units as possible for the slots 1, 2, 3 as long as possible. So that's the reason you still seeing there the Yellow Heavy Trooper. Now let's go into the stats right here, and we see we both actually use the shark formation. We haven't used the Valhallas. We stick with level 101 units. So here are the stats difference. So we see it's pretty much balanced, though granted you see me with a higher army attack, but then again he is slightly higher on the army damage increase and also a little bit higher on army damage decrease. And now let's also have a look at the DEF, because this is also super important. So yeah, you see him having 43.9 army DEF versus my almost 10%. And of course the DEF of all units, he has a roughly 20% higher than me. So let's go into these battle reports right here and let's have a look what happened. Of course, I'm going to put at one point a battle animation on the screen. and also gonna highlight some more important things regarding Nelle, but also some other questions which we still seek an answer for. So the way my setup should work is having a very high offense buffing capability, not only from Gipsy but also together with Nelle. Nelle has a small attack, is not that crazy high. She can only detonate her own magnetic pulses because no other hero in the match actually has this. And of course we have Mr. Striker in here. So the plan is something which you cannot quite calculate. In other words, yeah, it's all about when my hero's gonna proc versus when my opponent's hero's gonna proc. So that is this battle result right here, which is absolutely kind of super crazy. But we have far more battle reports, and you're gonna see right now the situation starts to be very complicated. So you see such a battle report right here. Now, what causes such a battle report? The idea is very simple. If my Gipsy and if my Striker are not able to start to proc right from the beginning of the battle as soon as possible, then I may get into trouble. Versus the other side, even if Gipsy and Striker are not proccing right from the beginning, every time Mr. Snake Eyes gets hit, he hits right back. So this is how the opponent can apply a pressure over time on me, or in other words on my slots, reducing the amount of units on my slots. And that's exactly what happens right here. I'm getting pushed to this point in which it's impossible for me to actually turn the battle around. But this is not the only battle report which actually looks like this. Let's go into the third battle report right here. Here we see a very solid performance from my side, no question about it. This is kind of mirroring again the great work from Mr. Mikuyara. And sure, we can have a look at roughly at the damage done by Gipsy and Striker versus his Gipsy and Striker. And we can also see the damage of Nelle with level 5 versus Snake Eyes with level 5. Let's carry on with the next battle report. And please stick with the video because I'm going to give you some side information on Nelle. So let's have a look at this next battle report, which kind of reminds us of that battle report in which my opponent, Mr. Colossus, still had 82% of his units. Now this worked slightly better. The issue here is kind of clear. You see my Gipsy with 122 damage in total from 4 hits versus his Gipsy with 190 damage from 9 hits. In other words, I don't even have to open this battle animation to know exactly how Gipsy performed in here. My Gipsy striked right at the beginning of the battle, which is the case in which I have the highest amount of units on my slots, while his Gipsy hit a couple more times, but not right away from the beginning. Of course, we see also the performance of my Striker versus his Striker. The difference is big. And of course, we see the difference between Nelle and Mr. Snake Eyes. Good, let's carry on with the last battle report right here, which is another weird one. Again, this is what happened right here. So you see me with my Gipsy having only 44.9T, though I have 5 procs, and Mr. Colossus Gipsy has 8 procs in total with 120T damage, which is 3 times more bigger than my damage. In other words, my Gipsy actually was unlucky and procced far too late in a battle. Not just simply that, also Mr. Striker was very unlucky, only 3 procs, and you see the damage 30T versus 144T from the twice amount of procs. But then again, when we check the values, it's almost 5 times bigger than my Striker. And of course, we see Nelle and Snake Eyes. So let's pop a battle animation right now in order for me to explain you and to highlight you again this difference right here. And furthermore, we also gonna give you some extra information on Nelle, and also gonna mention to you what set of questions we already sent to the developers, because there are some important facts. It would help us a lot if the developers actually answered these questions instead of us trying to figure out a way to test this in order to find out the answers. So let me put 2 battle animation on the screen. Now you see it on the right side. I have chosen a battle report, which is kind of a solid performance of my setup. And of course, on the left side of the screen, you are seeing that battle report in which my Gipsy and Striker went absolutely crazy. And also I am putting left and right screenshots from these two battle reports. First of all, Mr. Colossus is upstairs always, I'm always downstairs, but also you can see why this result actually happened, because there are so many factors we simply cannot take in consideration when we try to calculate the average performance of a March, and these are of course crucial, like for example, when is your heroes gonna proc? How often will they proc? What is the proc rate and when the opponent's hero will gonna proc? These are also super important information. Also, what targets exactly are you hitting? Are you hitting the back rows? Are you hitting the front rows? And so on. So this new tank hero Nelle is absolutely great. We have indeed a good idea how Nelle works, but still we have a few more questions for which we are still seeking the answers. So first thing what we actually notice is when a turn is finished, if there are still magnetic pulses effects on your opponent, this will be detonated. But the issue what we have noticed here is in the round 2, because you technically still have the indestructible buff, though the detonation of the magnetic pulses kind of applies after. In other words, they are bypassing the indestructible buff of the second turn. Of course, this is debatable if it should happen like this. Maybe it's something the developers will decide to fix later on, or maybe they will just gonna leave it like that. Fact is, you should know this. But we also have a lot of questions, like for example, who dictates the magnetic exclusive 5 from Nelle's finals damage? Is that the first stack? Is that the stack with the highest fire rate, or in other words, the heavy trooper stack? Another important question, which Gipsy row dictates the magnet damage? Is it the first row? Is it an average between the first and the second row? So yeah, we still have a few questions regarding Nelle, and what I have decided to do is take these questions and actually send it to the developers and seeking an answer for them, because surely, yeah, we can create a test and actually figure this one out. But then again, me personally, I am extremely busy actually answering a lot of DMs, making also these videos. And by the way, today I'm gonna try also to make a video on this topic right here, which is the roadmap for the next few months when it comes down to which hero should we expect. And this is gonna be a very important topic as always when it comes down to the heroes in Top War. So what's the conclusion on this setup right here? Granted, it works, no question about it, but we also have better alternatives to this in order to push your account performance to even a higher level, and that's exactly what we're gonna do in the next episode. Today, probably tomorrow, we're gonna still have to have a look at Striker together with Nelle and Mr. Snake Eyes, and we're also gonna have a look at Nelle together with Asuka, because I think this is gonna be super important to see how this works, because this opens up possibilities of you taking Gipsy and put it on the Navy or on the planes. So yeah, you get the picture. There are a lot of combinations out there. When it comes down specifically to this setup, which I have chosen today, yeah, I would still prefer to have Mr. Snake Eyes, because he is very, very consistent. You get hit, he is gonna hit ASAP back. While this setup right here with Gipsy, Striker and Nelle surely looks super awesome, but if Striker, Shinji have issues with their procs right from the beginning, then you see everything goes sideways pretty fast, allowing my opponent to constantly rise the pressure on my slots. In other words, I get less and less units on my slots, and by that time when my heroes will proc, I will no longer be able to turn this battle around. So in other words, what I'm trying to tell you here, it's not about these spikes results in which you see this battle report here on the left side of the screen. But for me, it's more important to actually have a more constant performance. So yes, dear beautiful people, this is the combination Gipsy, Striker together with Nelle. Of course, let's put back this great work from Mr. Mikuyada on the screen. I'm gonna put a link in the video description. You also can pause the video right now and take a screenshot. And you can definitely expect from this channel to provide you battle reports, battle analysis with those other hero combinations. So guys, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel in order to motivate me to carry on to do such great work. And on top of this, I also have a very small request which will gonna help me massively. So if you are one of these players, which videos like this help you to understand how these heroes or how this stuff actually works, and if you are going through the comments of these YouTube videos, you're still gonna meet a lot of players which still have questions regarding these things, please be so kind and jump in and give them their advice, because it's super important that the player is helped as soon as possible, and you are helping me massively by already answering those questions. So yeah, thank you for watching and don't forget to see me in the next episode. Ciao guys!